Some may not have heard of the city of Wilmington, which sits at the northern tip in the small state of Delaware. Within this modest city, there are many stories to be told. This story focuses on one community in particular. Little Italy, as we know it today, is a neighborhood inhabited by persons of diverse backgrounds. Its history is rich and its proud traditions are still practiced to this day. This is the bell tower of St. Anthony's Church, which rests on a hilltop in Wilmington's West End, its finial shadow acting much like the hand of a sundial over all the neighborhood. The tolling of the bells are heard throughout the surrounding areas. The church and its tower are the actual genesis of all you are about to see and hear. Our story is about a neighborhood, its effect on the city, and its relationship to other neighborhoods. From the 1880s to the turn of the 20th century, America experienced the greatest number of immigrants ever to enter its shores. Included among these immigrants were multitudes of Italians, most of whom were from southern Italy, or as they were also called, the Mezzogiorni. These people were of the most impoverished to migrate to America, and definitely did not belie the words inscribed on the Lady of the Harbor. All the Italians who landed in New York were processed at Ellis Island. All had a desire to endure whatever had to be experienced in America. An Italian community soon began in Wilmington, Delaware for several of these hopeful immigrants, where they had been promised and offered opportunities for steady work. In the 1920s, Italian immigrants living in Wilmington wanted desperately to have their own church in which to worship. They took it upon themselves to visit the office of the Papal Nuncio here in America to intercede to the Pope and seek the founding of an Italian national parish in the city of Wilmington. Up until this time, the Italian immigrants were relegated to hearing Mass at St. Peter's Cathedral at 6th and West Streets. They were limited to attending services at 9 a.m. and no other time.
My father's cousin, who, when he was born, his father took him to St. Thomas's Church to have him baptized. And the priest said to him, "You don't belong here, I'm not going to baptize the child." So he took him to St. Peter's. They told him the same thing. Then he took him to St. Anne's, and they told him the same thing. They would not baptize the child. Then he went back to St. Thomas's, and the priest there said, "I already told you once I'm not going to baptize him." And he said, "Well, I've gone to 3 different churches. None of you wants to baptize my child. You don't want to baptize him? I will take him to a Protestant church and have him baptized." And he said, "And then it is on your head." And that's when the priest baptized the child. Now, this sort of thing should never even have happened, but it did happen. And the experiences that the Italians had with the various churches was really not very good.
Their plea to Rome did not fall on deafened ears. Soon, a letter was received giving the first official announcement of an Italian parish being established in the city. Soon after the letter from the papal delegate was received, another letter from Bishop John Monahan was sent to the Reverend John Francis Tucker of the Oblates of St. Francis de Sales. Tucker was known as the Fighting Priest. He had served in the First World War and was also the first American oblate. The priest had been officially commanded to lead the opening of the new Italian parish of St. Anthony's and to seek the assistance of other priests from the oblate order. Few local priests had a tremendous impression upon the Italians of St. Anthony's. The lone, scrappy Father Tucker was faced with the dilemma of being the sole priest who spoke and understood Italian fluently.
He spoke what is called proper Italian and not one of the dialects. He spoke very good Italian. He spoke probably better Italian than most of the Italians did. And he was a very strong personality, a very intelligent man, and he built St. Anthony's Church with, of course, the help of the people in the parish.
When he was pastor, he had the hard times, the 10-cent seat collections. The big money, people weren't making it at that time. And he was, strictly for the parish. If he knew a family was out of work or something, he would go in and bring food and so forth. And he'd catch us stand on a corner and say, "Where's your buddies?" or things of that sort. And you say, "Well, they're in the movie. Why ain't you in the movie?" "I don't have the money, Father. I can't afford it," And he would say, "Here, put his man in his pocket and give you a little huff in the rear end and say, don't let me catch you stand on the corner again." But he did a lot of things. He sent us on trips to Riverview, and there were so many things that he did. And when he was here, we had to be at church at 8 o'clock Mass. The boys on one side, the girls on the other. And if you weren't in Mass, you better be home sick in bed, because he would be at your door. I mean, he was great.
One particular Saturday, I'll never forget as long as I live. There was this little old lady kneeling in the front pew, and her name was Full of May. And one of my friends was named Frankie Panarello. And Frankie was always about two-thirds, short of a full peck, you know what I mean, right? So anyway, he said, "Watch this." And we're up the very top of the altar, and you got to remember, we didn't have a ceiling at St. Anthony's at that time. We just had a catwalk that went down the center of the church long before we had put the ceiling in. So Frankie gets up at the very head of the altar, and he looks down and he sees her in the first pew. And it was dimly lit like it is now. And he, in a sing-song voice, he says, "Full of May! Full of May! Jesus te chiamate!" Which meant Jesus is calling you. And this poor old lady looks up and she can't see anything because it's awful dark up there, right? And she thinks there's a voice from heaven. Well, back in them days, the old ladies used to have dresses that went down to their ankles, right? So then again, and in the second attempt, Frankie says, "Full of May!" And he sings it out again. "Jesus te chiamate!" Well, this woman, panic-stricken, she grabbed the dress and she's running out of church. "Hoodie, hoodie, 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 hoodie." And she's running down the front, towards the front of the church and out. And she runs across the street. Now, the rectory was at 926 DuPont back in them days, remember? And man, we were up in the loft, and she runs over to Father Tucker, and she said, "The Lord just spoke to her. The Lord just called her." And Father Tucker said, "I think I know who the Lord is." He said, "I'll be right back," right? So he comes over here, and we're just now climbing down, the three of us, right? Gus, he gave us, talk about being abused by a priest. He gave us a hell of a beating, man, I tell you, right?
Now, the building, there were a lot of craftsmen and tradesmen in the Italian community, and they all worked on building this church. And this has been the hallmark of St. Anthony's Parish, where whenever they needed something, they built it.
Tucker wasted little time in enlisting the aid of not only wealthy Italian and other businessmen such as Michael Fidanza, Ernest de Sabatino, Joseph Fortunato, and countless others. His pleas were answered by the local gentry as well. Not a single bricklayer, carpenter, stonemason, or anyone else was forgotten in his ambitious endeavor to get the parish started. Help arrived with assistant pastors from the Order of the Oblates of St. Francis de Sales, such as Father Paul Fournier. By this time, it was 1924, and the cornerstone of St. Anthony's Parish was laid, indicating the opening of a new parish. In the meantime, some 3,000 miles away in Italy, 10-year-old Roberto Botticelli was asked by his uncle, who was a priest.
I came back from serving Mass, and my uncle, the priest, was talking to my mother. And I met them in front of the house. And my uncle, the priest, said to my mother, "What are you going to do with Roberto?" She said, "I don't know." He says, "You want to be a priest? I got to send him to school. He's in the school here." She looked at me and said, "Really, you want to be a priest?" "Yeah." "Will you come to Rome? I send you to school?" "Yeah." "You mean you will leave your mother?" "Yeah." He took me to Rome. I was in France at the novitiate of the Oblates of St. Francis de Sales, and every evening we were peeling potatoes for the community for the next day. And suddenly someone came in. He looked at 7 of us. He looked at me and he said, "Are you Roberto?" I was surprised someone would know my name. And I have no idea who that man was. He was wearing a collar, but he was wearing pants. And in Europe, the priests always wear a cassock, so I didn't know if he was a priest or not. I said, "Yes, I'm Roberto." "When are you going to be ordained a priest?" "I'm 16. "Hurry up, for God's sake. I need you at St. Anthony." And he left. I have no idea who the person was until I found out it was Father Tucker. He had been named pastor of St. Anthony's Church in 24. This was 28, 29. And he was named pastor because he was the only priest in the diocese who could speak Italian. And they could not hear confession of the entire population. He was needing an assistant. So he went to Italy, looking for the oblates in Italy, thinking that they would find an oblate priest who would come to the United States as his assistant. There was nobody. They told him there is only one who will be a priest, an oblate, we hope. And he's the novitiate, he's in France. So he came to see me. He had no idea. I was 16, I guess.
It was a time of the Great Depression. Like most other families in America, the men and women of this community suffered greatly. Yet with their own spirit of preservation and constant push of their spunky Irish pastor, they emerged tired, weary, and for the most part successful. Tucker instituted women's religious groups such as the Blessed Virgin Mary Sodality and the Holy Name Men's Club, as well as youth clubs and athletic teams. It was during these years that saw the Campanile or bell tower finally built in 1937. Around the same time, there were ominous rumblings coming out of Europe and Asia. Names such as Adolf Hitler, Tojo, and Benito Mussolini were grabbing news headlines. In the meantime, over in Italy, Roberto Botticelli had been ordained a priest and was sent to serve as an assistant pastor in a suburb of Paris.
And then he came back in 37. I was ordained to a priesthood for a year. "Are you coming now?" I said, "Father, I cannot tell you if I come in now. It's not up to me to decide where I'm going to go." You know, we are like soldiers. We go where they send us. I understand that. Would you like to come? I don't know. I'd like to come. You know, I told them the first Italian oblate, and they have the intention to start the oblates here in Italy. I have no idea. I'm going to see Father General. I'm going to ask him to send to the United States. Okay. And get ready for the 29th of September. Get the ship at the Havre. Okay. I received a card from him a few weeks later. He would say, "Sorry, not without hope. Tucker." You see me? And a few weeks later, I received another letter from the general. I was appointed pastor, assistant pastor, at the Church of Notre Dame de l'Espérance in Petit-Ivry. I said, "What is this?" "What is this?" I said, "Can't you read?" The pastor said to me, "What is Petit-Ivry?" "It's Paris." "Paris?" You mean I had to go to Paris? Simple it is. They want me to be there on the 15th of September, today, the 28th. Hurry up, there's a train tonight. I was in Paris for 2 years, and the last day I was there, I said I had to go back in Italy in a hurry on account of the war starting. I said to the pastor, I said, "I have to leave." He said, "I understand. Tell you frankly, I don't know why I came here to start with." "Oh," he said, "to tell you. Father Tucker came here looking for the general. We were at lunch. And he told them, you know, I need an Italian priest. I need Father Robert. And I cannot take care of the parish by myself, only one speaking Italian. And this and this and this." He discussed the matter. The general said, "Okay, you can have him." So I, the pastor, local pastor, there said, "What do you mean?" He sent Robert to the United States. They want the vocation they want over there. I could use him right here. This is the center of French communism. So many Italians here, I cannot speak to them. I want somebody to come here, and he banged at the table. And the general changed his mind to send me to Paris.
Halfway across the world, so much had happened since Father Tucker began building St. Anthony's. The church was growing and was becoming a bastion for all the forgotten Italian people who had arrived in America. The people worked hard. Their struggle was not easy, but they were made of sterner stuff. They did not mind hard work, and their eyes were firmly set on providing their children with more than they had been given. The 30s passed quickly, but not without struggle. Somehow the light at the end of the tunnel seemed larger and brighter. Then, on a quiet Sunday, on December 7th, 1941, the complexion of life in Little Italy and the rest of the neighborhoods would change forever. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor on that day of infamy. And all America, although stunned, became imbued with a patriotic fervor that extended from 6th and Lincoln to the farms of the Midwest to the streets of San Francisco. Young men whose longest trip may have been to surrounding neighborhoods in Wilmington now found themselves on transports heading for exotic destinations. For most, the closest they had been to foreign lands were at the movies. Now it was not Gunga Din in India, but it was Frankie Timone on his first elephant ride. Japan. Who knew anything about Japan, let alone Asia? Tucky Lasorte lived in the middle of Little Italy. He knew nothing of Japan. Little did he know that in a very short time, he would soon become a bombardier on a small bomber helping to quell the Japanese fleet in the Sea of Japan.
I remember going in and bombing the battleship, which was tied up. And what the Japs were doing, they were taking, I say Japs, I should say Japanese, I guess. They were removing the hardware, the 16 or the 18-inch gun, or this one had 14 or 16-inch guns on it, to make emplacements, ground emplacements, so that, you know, to ward off any invasion. And we bombed it, and we didn't sink it, but we it was a burning mass when we left it. And then we started, home. You're still under a little pressure and tension until you get out of the area. You vector, you join up with planes going your way. And we were on the way back, and I used to keep an eye out, and it paid off this day, because I looked down and I saw a green flare, the green dye. We used to carry these pouches with dye in it, so that if you made a water landing, you'd sprinkle it, and it was very obvious from up above. And I didn't remember hearing anybody reporting seeing it. So I called the pilot and told him, I said, Griff, I see green dye down there. Anybody report? He said, no, I haven't heard anything. He said, I'll call the skipper. So he called the flight leader. He called our flight leader, who called the leader of the whole, the group going back, and said, so the guy told him, he said, our commander said, well, you guys found him, you take care of him.
Holy shit.
So pilot, they told our pilot, did you hear what he said? Yeah. He said, we'll get down. So we flew. He didn't mean it in a derogatory more, but he said, you know where he is and everything.
There were countless numbers of young men who left their families for these strange places. Some were not lucky enough to come back. Others, physically wounded, would never be the same again. Still, they went finding themselves in places called Normandy, Anzio, and the Khyber Pass. These places became part of a common bond and language amongst them. All people stood by their radios, anticipating the news that they would hear. Gabriel Heder, a popular news commentator with the local gentry, became a barometer of the nightly recounting of the war's daily events, with his predictions of good news tonight, and on more ominous evenings, bad news tonight.
You think about these things. You didn't think about it then, but there's somebody's father, brother, son, husband. That's why I say wars. I was lucky. I lived my life. Think of these poor kids, 18, 19, 21, 22 years old.
Seemingly overnight, these Wilmington boys who had dared venture a block or two from their own home had now traveled halfway around the world to destinations unknown. Their lives extended to become part of the neighborhoods, farms, and cities of the war in both the European and Asian theaters. Nothing brought about such enormous and immediate change as a surprise bombing of Pearl Harbor and the machinations of the world's most famous paper hanger, Adolf Hitler. Rather than going home, Father Roberto found his way to Rome. He made himself useful in various capacities. By the early 1940s, Father Roberto was actively enforcing papal orders received through the papal administrator, Bishop Traglia, to save as many lives in Rome and the Vatican City as humanly possible.
It was the best year of my life as a priest. Why? Because you are put in position that you have to do something at the risk of your life if you do your duty. Or you're a coward. It's not in between. And the 5 years of war forced me to do my job, by necessity, You cannot be a coward. And at the end of the war, I said, well, we made it. But we had moments of courage, I tell you. We had moments of courage.
Standing side by side with Father Roberto Botticelli was Sister Pasqualina Lenhart, the private cook of Pope Pius XII. Together, they diligently worked to help the war-torn persons in Rome. Sister Pasqualina would be very influential in Father Roberto's migration to the United States of America.
One afternoon, my brother said to me, Robert, guess who is at the monastery? I know. Sister Pasqualina. Do you know Sister Pasqualina? I don't know. She's a German nun that the Pope asked from Germany to come to the Vatican with the other nuns. And they take care of the Pope and kitchen and everything. And she came here to bring gifts from America, the Catholic American, to the people who are really poor. And they know we were the most poor of Rome because we were bombed during the war intensively. Huh. I walk out, I meet her, a tall lady. She said, "Are you stationed here?" I said, "Yes, weekends. Can we help you?" I said, "Sister, you are talking to the sister, we are one community. But thank you for the Vatican to come and to give help here." They were clothes, you know, blankets, something like that. Because we were destroyed during the war. The people really need help. "Can I help you personally?" Personally. Then I thought, Father Niedermeyer saying, "Father Tucker still is looking for you." It came on my mind by like this. I said, "Sister, maybe. One day I will be sent to the United States, I don't know. But if time comes, maybe I need the Vatican to help me to get the paper to get there, you know." What is your name? And she left. Oh, paying attention. The next morning, a young man came in. He said, "Are you Roberto Balducciali?" "Yes." "I mean, you are Roberto Balducciali personally?" "Yes, yes, what is it?" "I'm coming from the Vatican." "Oh my God. What's wrong?" You know, during the war we took any kind of risk, you know. He said, "I have a letter to give to you." I opened the letter. It was a card, handwritten. His Holiness Pope Paul XII would be very grateful to the ambassador of the United States of America in Rome if you could help Father Roberto Balducciali to reach your country for pastoral ministry. Sign. Well, the next day I called the embassy. I had a letter from the Pope. So I told them, "I have to see the ambassador." "Who are you?" "My name is Roberto Balducciali." "What is the purpose?" "Well, I have a letter from the Pope to give the ambassador." "Oh." So I was there a few days later. I presented the letter. It was an office as big as this, clean, red American flag and all this, you know. I was dressed up like a same clothes for 4 years. You know. I had been wounded, my head was open up like this. I was like a hippie. He was looking at the car, he was looking at me, and I could see in his face the thing was not matching. "Well, Reverend," he said, "as you know, we are at war." I said, "I know. I cannot send the United States during the war. There is no transportation." So I understand that. But I had to give you this letter. "Well," he said, "the war will be over. Give me your name and address, and I will call you." 6 months later, he called me in the afternoon. There's a boat going back empty to the States. There's room for you if you want to catch it. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning in Genoa. Pack up, went to Genoa, pick up the boat, 29 days. I can do it.
On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered. There was victory in Europe. Back in Little Italy, there was a good reason for celebration. Sons and daughters who had been away from the neighborhood of the streets of Wilmington for the past 3 to 5 years were returning home. It was a time of great joy, thus creating a new era of great feeling for all the citizens of Wilmington and the cities of America. The ending of World War II on August 15, 1945 signaled a new beginning for Father Tucker and the people of St. Anthony's Church. Brave soldiers from the Little Italy neighborhood had returned. Tucker continued his efforts to build a bigger, better, and stronger parish that would benefit all of his parishioners. He continued on with such events as the yearly carnival and procession held on St. Anthony's Day, June 13th each year. The Via Crucis, or Way of the Cross, was celebrated each year throughout Lent. Confirmations, baptisms, communions, and weddings seemed to increase greatly. Young men returned home from the wars to marry their childhood sweethearts and sometimes sweethearts from other lands. It was an era of not only rebuilding but reconstitution of faith. As with any growth, changes would come. For the men and women of St. Anthony's, they would gain a new leader and friend. Father Baldicelli first came to St. Anthony's Parish in 1945 and was known as the Italian priest. Preparations underway for the 25th anniversary of the church's founding kept the parish very busy. Under the tutelage of Father Dieno, assistant priest Roberto became involved in construction, cement work, and the interior design of the church as well as its associated buildings. In 1948, the two of them, with the help of local gentry, built Fournier Memorial Hall, which went on to host many famous entertainers. In 1949, Father Tucker left St. Anthony's, moving to Monaco. He had been assigned to become the chaplain of Prince Rainier and was responsible for introducing him to Grace Kelly. He later married them in a worldwide ceremony that was heavily covered by the media. Father McCoy became pastor of St. Anthony's.
Father McCoy was moved in as the new pastor, and Father McCoy did make a lot of changes. Well, not a lot. He did make some very positive changes. The church became really the center of the community. It really drew the people in together. It really drew them in. It was a powerful factor in the Italian community.
Known as the educating priest, McCoy was responsible for building St. Anthony's School. Now, as pastor, McCoy devoted more focus than ever on education.
Father McCoy became the pastor, and Father Robert was his assistant. And lo and behold, the school did start over the old number 11 school over there. And eventually they outgrew that, and they started to build, which is now the grammar school right here at the corner of 9th and Scott.
So they put me the chairman of the construction. I knew nothing about chairman, about construction. I remember one day, Tom Molioni was the best stonemason. We were building the wall on Scott Street. He asked me the elevation of the window, how tall the window was going to be, to stop the wall there. He said, "Well, Robert, do you have an elevation for this window?" I said, no, but I can buy one. I told him it was a 2. That was how much I knew about construction. 5 years and we built it.
A grand achievement in his endeavor to improve education came with Padua Academy, an all-girl Catholic high school which opened in 1954.
Girls were passing by in the area between the school, the today parking lot. About a dozen girls said, "Father, can you help us to go to a Catholic high school?" Sure, oh, certainly. And they're asking me day after day, I said, "What's the matter? What's wrong about going to Catholic high school?" Finally, I said, I had to do something. So I went to Ursuline, and I said, "I have a dozen girls, I'd like to apply to your school. What should I do?" They looked at me like I was crazy. So what's wrong? We have no room. It's only 12. We don't have room for a single person. What should I do? You can try St. Elizabeth. I won't dare, same answer. So the school was on construction only 1 year. The roof was on. more or less, not all of it. And the British school, they were far more cool. I said, you know, the kids expect to go to Catholic high school. He said, well, we don't have any. Only Salesiano for boys. But these are girls. I said, I know. I said, you know, we build the school very big, you know, 16 classrooms. We only need 8 for the grade school. I said, why don't we get high school too? We finish the building and you get the faculty. He went to work to Glen Riddle, he got the faculty. He made nuns. We had to struggle to put the building together. We finished the building 4 years later. We had Padua Academy running in the school under construction. But you know what? It was the best class we ever had. Pioneer, enthusiastic and so forth, they didn't care. The toilet was not functioning. They had to go cross the street to go to the whole building at the beginning. The heat was not there functioning either. The heat came around the 15th of November. They were wearing clothes and gloves in the classroom. And they used the auditorium for the first and last time the day of their graduation. A beautiful time, beautiful time.
And eventually it outgrew itself. And I happened to be here at the rectory. I was transferred out of here in about 1966. I went up to Villa Maria for 2-3 years. We were finished building here. The rectory was finished and the convent was on its way.
So I went to see the bishop. I told him, you know, I have 80 kids on the first grade. I had to have 2 classrooms. So of course. But if that continues, we're going to have a problem because we have not enough room for Padua Academy and grade school. Well, I said, it's not going to be the same thing. It's going to change. So that's it. The following year was the same thing. 3 years later, the same thing. And I said, what are you going to do with Padua Academy? He said, if you have no room, you have to close it. I said, Bishop, you cannot close it. There are 350 girls there, they're happy and content. It's the only Catholic school they can go to. I cannot just set them out. He said, what else can you do? I have no money, you have no money, you still have a debt on that school building. You can't even think of another building. So one day, finally, I was convinced there was no alternative. And I went, I remember, the second floor of the grade school, the girl passing by in front of me. Hi, Father. And I was saying, the school is closed. Hi, Father. The school is closed. It was a quick kind of puzzle to it. It was the darkest moment, you know, didn't know what the heck to do. You cannot close the school, you got kids in the street, and there was no way to build the school because there was no money, there was nothing. And finally came the solution. I mean, in the meantime, you know, we increased the convent, we put classrooms, in the meantime we taught downstairs here. It was murder. And finally, one day, the bishop was a very great bishop. He made a referendum into the diocese, asking the people what they thought would be good for the diocese as a development. And among other things came, we need 2 more high schools and 3 interparochial grade schools. They're going to close one. On that day I said, well, I take a chance. I put in the parish bulletin, Centennial Padua is going to close. Nobody paid attention, except Monsignor Taggart. He called me and said, are you crazy? He said, no, I ordered the bishop. He said, we are going to ruin our campaign for the referendum. I said, that is your business. I have mine.
I came here to visit one night for supper, and Father Robert came in for supper. He was late, and when he came in, you could see that he was beat up and tired, and he was worn out. He had just came from a meeting with the diocese about a campaign that they were starting, and they told Father Robert that they had to either close Padua Academy. Well, they wanted to close Padua Academy, and they were building a new high school for St. Mark's, and that was supposed to take its place and everything. It hadn't started yet. And I remember when Father Robert came here for supper, I was just visiting here for supper that night, and he broke it to the community that they wanted him to build the new Padua Academy. And when he broke that, I remember he was sitting right here at the head of this table right here, and I was dumbfounded, because I don't think anybody that was sitting at that table was for it. Well, he told me that he was going to build a new Padua Academy. And I said, well, I kind of figured that. I was there that night. Well, he didn't remember that I was there that night when he broke the news to the group. And I said, well, that's fine, Father. I said, I wish you all luck in the world. I said, you know, who's the contractor, you know? And he said, you. I like you to be the contractor. And I told him, but not the way other people told him. I said, Father, you're crazy. You mean to tell me after we finished the grammar school, you're willing to go all through that again? And you know, with the nights and the days and the weekends? He said, well, Mike, and when he said that word Mike, he has a way of saying Mike. When he says Mike, I knew that his mind was made up, and we were going to do it. And all I said to him was, Father, I'm up here. Obedience sent me here, and obedience will have to send me away.
I remember standing on the sidewalk the day of the groundbreaking and saying to Brother Mike, how can you build a school with no money? And he said, you will eat those words. And I certainly did. But I did learn from Father Robert in that period of time. It was his solid belief that if you really begin a work, and it is God's work, that you do not worry about where money will come from or how you will finish the job. You just go about doing your work, and God will take care of everything.
He said, well, you can build a school and you can borrow the money. I said, I can partly borrow the money. I borrow the money only if I know I can eventually be able to pay back. How am I going to pay back when I have to put the building up, get the school, make it run? Impossible. Didn't expect that. They knew anxious I was to build the school, and it was true, but in these conditions. Then I said, you know, I'm at St. Anthony for 10 years or so. He said, my provincial can change me tomorrow morning. I cannot make commitment. And I was burning inside, you know, I didn't know what. Go to see a provincial and give us an answer tonight before midnight. I went to see the provincial with Father Conmay, who was a classmate of mine. A man I get great appreciation of him. Told him the story. He says, Rob, it's not that bad. What do you think is wrong? I cannot pay back, but they know that. They know. They take the chance. Well, I said, look, I do not give you the obedience to do it, but if I were you, I would do it. These girls need a school, and you should have it. It's a great school you have. Take care of these girls. Remember Christ said, let the children come to me, and when they come to me, you use me. Go ahead, do it. Okay. Before midnight, I call Monsignor Ford, it's going. I'm saying yes.
Actually, we were the faculty. There were 8 of us on the faculty of Padua Academy. And I had not realized when I came here what a young school it was. But then as he began the building, it was very interesting to see how it would go up. And he came around many nights and would just look at the property. There were times when all the construction came to a halt because there was no money. And they were some of the evenings when we would meet him while we were walking, and he would tell us he was simply talking to God and asking him when he was going to start the construction again. But he was not worried about where anything would come from. And it was a very interesting insight, having come from such a large archdiocese, and to meet someone who was going on faith alone, that God would bring this to its completion.
I remember the first year I gave him a hug. He gave me a hug, and he said, "It's been a long job, but it's there." And we did it every year until last year, because I wasn't here. I ended up down at Childs with heart surgery, and I missed graduation the first time in that many years, and I haven't said it. But I mean that. Of everything that it was done around here, I think that's one of his greatest accomplishments, because it's Padua, it's part of St. Anthony's, and we educated over 4,000 girls. Not just from St. Anthony's, 4 different states, and about 27 different parishes.
April the 4th, 1968 was the darkest day remembered as if yesterday, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
I was at a banquet, a sports banquet at Salesianum, when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Were you there that night?
I was one of the escorts for Marciano.
I'm sorry?
I was one of the guys that was there for Marciano.
Was that night?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember, and I thought, what in the heck are they, why would they want to kill a guy like that? And what's going to happen, And then, of course, a couple of days after that, we had the riots.
Buildings were lit aflame and burning down within the city of Wilmington, Little Italy being a rare exception. By 1969, most people would not dare venture outside after 10 p.m.
Well, when they brought the National Guard in, I remember we was working right down in Madison Street. Yeah. And they burnt, whole Madison Street burnt down.
Right there at 9th and Jefferson, I'll never forget it. I was trying to get the west side, and one of the troop, National Guardmen said, I was getting ready to go, he said, if you don't get your black head in there,
kids
I'll blow it off.
That's right.
I saw a guy run across the street with a rifle. And I stopped. Another friend of mine came out, and they had a pistol. Looked like a .45, and I said, what the heck's going on? And he said, we have word that they're going to come in and tear up Little Italy. And I said, you're crazy. He said, that's what they're doing. So I said, where's that guy going with a gun? He got up on the store, it used to be a drugstore. It wasn't a drugstore at that time. I don't remember what it was now. It used to be Latin American Pharmacy. He got up there, and I looked, he said, look up on the roofs. And on 6th Street, on many, not every roof, but on 4 or 5 roofs between Lincoln and Union on both sides of the streets were guys with shotguns. This is God's honest truth. I thought, what the heck? These guys are nuts.
Fires were set that could be seen through the city. People were in great pain and despair.
Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome.
But eventually they would overcome. Little Italy would continue moving forward as well. During the bicentennial year of 1975, St. Anthony's one-time street carnival grew to gala proportions. This festival grew to be what was known as one of the top 3 Italian festivals of the United States, rivaling such large cities as New York, Detroit, and Minneapolis. The St. Anthony's Italian Festival continues with the same tradition to this very day. During the same year, in 1975, a devastating fire destroyed the fellowship hall and basement of Wilmington's A Street Baptist Church. St. Anthony's provided temporary space for the neighboring ministry until 1977, when renovations were completed.
We were very appreciative, of the neighborhood coming to our rescue at that time, because we were still in the midst of discrimination, segregation.
The experience that we had at the Fournier home, it's a great thing to explain and tell your grandchildren, or either someone else that maybe was around then, but they just weren't, as old as as we were when we were coming up. But the experience is really great.
The fire happened for a purpose, and you never know why. Perhaps it was a mystery. But the fire galvanized the 8th Street congregation, galvanized and opened up a window of opportunity for blacks, whites, African American church, Catholic church, predominantly Italians, to come together and to help one another. I think the most phenomenal thing about that was that they saw a congregation in need, and they looked beyond race, class, and creed, and said, here we are as your neighbor. We're going to do what we can, because they believe that if the shoe was on the other foot, the 8th Street Church would have done the same thing.
The body then returned to the renovated church, later relocating under the name of the Resurrection Center.
Whatever happens, sometimes God allows it. And he can speak to, he helped us through someone else, another man of God, and Father Borticelli.
The turbulence prominent in the 60s was still apparent, yet there were acts of goodwill as demonstrated in these neighboring communities. Further diversity and integration was also witnessed within this community. Additionally, lifelong residents had slowly migrated out of the Italian neighborhood and into other parts of the city of Wilmington, other surrounding cities and their suburbs. Though still an undoubtedly Italian neighborhood, the complexion of Little Italy had changed dramatically.
I think that our population in many ways has become better educated, much more sophisticated than before. We are not as provincial as we once were. There are a number of reasons for that. First of all, people become more prosperous. Being more prosperous, they can travel more. And travel in itself is enough, will give a person a degree of education that he doesn't acquire if he stays put in one area all of his life. It gives you a view that is much broader than you ordinarily would have. You still have people who have biases and so forth, but you're always going to have that.
When our former mayor, Dan Frawley, died, I and Father Botticelli, we did the father, I forget his name, he and I did the eulogy. Keach, Father Keach, Bill Keach. Keach and I did the eulogy. So that tells you how close we were to the Frawley family, who was an Irishman, whose funeral was at St. Anthony's Church. And here you have an African-American Baptist preacher eulogizing the former mayor, an Irishman, in a Catholic church, also with the Catholic priests, at St. Anthony's.
St. Anthony's Church also saw the pageantry of the Via Crucis, or Way of the Cross, upgraded to epic proportions. Instituted by Father Francis Tucker and improved greatly by Father Roberto Balducelli, the event proceeded to draw in crowds from several surrounding states. During the same time, Father Balducelli began work on St. Anthony's in the Hills, a property across the state line in Pennsylvania, where he proceeded to build a camp, playground, and picnic area for underprivileged children from the city.
Well, Frank Rubino finally calls him. He said, Father, he says, I know some people have a farm right over the state line in Pennsylvania that I think you can buy. He said, let me take it up and show it to you. So he takes Father Robert up and shows it to him, and the woman was there, the elderly lady that wanted to get rid of it. They made a deal. It was $100 and some thousand, I forget what it was, into about 150 acres. I mean, back then that's pretty cheap. But anyway, Father says, yeah, we're going to buy it, taking it. So Frank gets everything set up and gets ready to go make settlement and everything, and Father says to him, Frank, you know, you got to pay for it. I don't have any money. He made Frank pay for it. I think he eventually, you know, maybe conned enough people out of the money to give it back to him, but poor Frank had to pay for it.
In the 1980s, the community of Little Italy had greatly matured. Lifelong patrons included several successful businessmen who thought nothing of devoting their spare time and charitably donating to their beloved parish and its surrounding neighborhood.
I sold tickets up there for a lot of time, a lot of years. And I used to sell 25, 30,000. They would only sell 100 tickets. I would sell them all. In fact, I have a paper there where I used to call the same people up, Frank, Cherno, this, that, and the other, right? And then I would sell the half and half and the gift baskets. But then my knees start hurting, my shoulders hurt. I'm 78 years old, and I have sugar and different things. So I said, Father, I can't do it anymore. I said, I'm quitting selling tickets. I did that maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Then I was up there. I like to go up there. You know why I did that? I said, I should pay you for selling tickets because you used to meet all the people that, you know, you never see. Cousins, friends, the Sabatinas, and everybody that normally, where do you see them? You don't see them. So it was a pleasure to me, and I bumped it. Hey, Gus, how you doing? How you doing? And it'd just be like a jam session as far as I was concerned. So I was up there another Sunday. Who guess you think was selling tickets, Father Robert? He was sweating. This is just 2 years ago. I said, give me the tickets, Father. So I finished that afternoon for him. Now, he said, well, see, I had a system. I had in there, I think I left it there. I had every builder. There you are. Every builder, I had their name and phone number. And I would call them up and say, Frank Cherno, how many tickets you want? You're taking 1,000. It's 2,500. Harry Simon, you're taking 1,000. So I used to sell them. And then half the people that Cherno would buy, he wouldn't use them anyway. You know what I'm saying? Joe Delaversano, he used to donate 300 ears of corn. And Phoebe used to do the crabs. And it was just like Phoebe does a lot of work up there, and all the people who worked. And one girl, I forgot, she was working in the kitchen, and she hit the half and half. So they said, you want $800 and some. She says, give it to the church. She never even took it.
I had a piece of ground in Hockessin, which is about maybe 2 or 3 miles from the camp. And I tried to zone it for a shopping center. I owned it for about 12 years. Got knocked down. Every 3 years you could take it in. Got knocked down 3 times. I finally got so disgusted, Father, you can have it. I gave it to him. He had it zoned and sold the same year. Got $400,000 for it. And he started the education fund for it up there. With
over $2 million.
In 1988, Father Balducelli retired after years as St. Anthony's pastor. Father William Keach succeeded him, instituting computers as part of the curriculum and the educational system of St. Anthony's.
I understand you were the 4th pastor of St. Anthony's Parish, but you're the first priest to follow Father Balducelli.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That had to have been an interesting time, not just for the parish, but for you personally and for Father Robert as well.
It was a very tough act to follow because he was a legend, and he has been for years. And to try to fit into those shoes was a very difficult thing. Mm-hmm. And of course, he was Italian, and I'm Irish. Of course, he was one of the actually only 3 priests that were pastors, Italian pastors of St. Anthony's. Mm-hmm. The rest of them were all Irish, including the founding pastor, Father Tucker. So it was difficult, but I was determined that I was going to try to follow and keep some kind of a continuity between what he was doing and what I was doing as much as I could. Did you find that you had a certain thought about how to fill his shoes, or did you try not to fill his shoes? Well, I didn't want to fill his shoes, but I wanted to try to have a continuity. For instance, the fact that he was Italian, and of course he maintained the Italian culture there, and I wanted to make sure that that's one of the reasons I decided to take Italian as a language. I had been in the service, and I was stationed in northern Italy, and I did learn some Italian. That's probably the wrong words, but I did learn some Italian. And when I took a course there from a Mrs. Chavone, she taught in Berlitz, and she was an excellent teacher. And I took it for a year. Then the following year, a story about this my Italian language skills. The following year, we had a wine tasting affair at the grammar school, and I went to it, of course. And they appointed a wine steward at each table, and then they put a cardboard number on you. I had number 1. And Father Robert was late coming in, so I went to him and I said, "Ecco numero uno." And he said, what Mrs. Chavone couldn't do in a week, in a year, a bottle of wine did in like an hour.
That's cute.
But I did that, and he used to, for instance, every Christmas and Easter, he would greet people at every Mass in Italian before he started his sermon in English. And I decided to do the same thing as a part of the continuity. That's one of the reasons I learned the Italian. And I got Father Robert and Father Mario to go over the greeting, which I had written down, of course, and that I think if I had gotten one word beyond what was on that paper, though, it probably would have catastrophe. You know.
I'm sure you endeared yourself to people by doing that.
I think they appreciate the fact that I made that effort.
I'm sure.
At approximately this time, St. Anthony's bell tower had its bells silenced due to malfunction, and for 15 years the bells of St. Anthony's did not toll. Then, in 2003, Thomas Deladon, along with entertainer Benny Mardonis, staged a concert to raise money to reinstitute the bells and bell system of the church. This concert, entitled The Bells for St. Anthony's, raised enough money to kickstart the purchase of the bells and bell system that ring on the hour every day.
We packed the Grand Opera House and raised a significant amount of money, and the bells are fixed, and it gives me a special feeling every time I hear those bells because it played such a big part in the community. It was one of the greatest nights, actually. I really enjoyed that night because there were people from, in their teens all the way up to 75, 80 years old that came to the concert. Some didn't even know who the singer or the performer was, and they all showed up predominantly because it was to benefit St. Anthony. So that's kind of the draw that this parish has in the community. And they were wowed by a singer they probably didn't know an awful lot about because of the generation gap between many of the people that attended, including Father Robert. So it was a great night and something that we really enjoyed.
The church saw its first neighborhood priest, Father Anthony Silvestri, son of Italian immigrants, instituted as pastor.
He got the dream assignment that he always wanted, the pastor of St. Anthony's Parish. It's a shame. He didn't live long enough to really, do the things he wanted to do. But I'll tell you one thing. He would have been a superb pastor for the parish. He was a well-educated man. He had a master's degree from Villanova. He went to Niagara University, and he taught at several different schools that the Oblates have throughout their diocese. It's been, I don't know, maybe 12 years since he's died, and he's etched in the stained glass window in our choir loft up here at St. Anthony's Parish. The people that knew him would never forget him, because once you met him, he was a person that was difficult to forget.
Several pastors followed after Father Silvestri, culminating with the present pastor, Father John McGinley, who continues on with the traditions established by his predecessors.
Looking on to the future, we're trying to continue the legacy, to renovate our church. It's a beautiful church, beautiful church. And I'm fond of telling young people, St. Anthony's of Padua cannot be a church of weddings and funerals, and encouraging people to become active members in St. Anthony of Padua Parish. Tremendous social outreach, as you mentioned, in Meals for Wheels for the entire Newcastle County program at the Father Roberto Center, the name you probably recognize.
Even after retirement and well into his 90s, Father Balduccelli continues with his work for the parishioners of St. Anthony's and their children. His age does not prevent him from frequently lending not only his presence and leadership, but also his skilled craftsmanship to the ongoing construction and development enjoyed by the community.
This is a playground restricted to children from 1 year to 5. You have a gazebo there, the gate here, and that is the area where they're going to hold. And it's right now we are looking at the location now. Then the equipment will go inside.
Wow. How long has this project been going on for? How long have we been working on this project for?
This one here about a year and a half. So we had to take care of, there is a creek around, and quite land in that side. We have to make sure that the children do not go inside of the creek. So we have to put a fence here all around like that, about 800 feet of it.
Wow.
All this. It's a long fence going all down, see, and turn around that way. To make sure the kids do not go in the wrong spot.
An inspiration to all, Father Roberto Botticelli is still visible in the church and community, serving as a shining example of the spirit of St. Anthony's. Many suns have risen and set since the first Italian immigrants set foot in the city of Wilmington. They came here with a goal in mind, and that was to have something better and greater for their sons and daughters than they had left in their impoverished land. Most of them hardly spoke any English at all, and even their native dialects that were indigenous to the particular areas from which they came were not understandable to their new Italian neighbors. Because of this emerged a new Italian dialect that would be Italian American. Regardless, they understood each other's plight and continued working tirelessly to achieve what seemed an unattainable goal. Gradually, this ladder to success would be climbed, and with the help of persons such as Father J. Francis Tucker, their dreams became a reality. The building of St. Anthony's Church was the beginning of a monument that attested to their strong wills. Despite their limitations, they approached this work as a labor of love and beauty. This, combined with their own tenacity to succeed, brought to fruition an unequaled masterpiece that will seemingly be marveled forever. It was more than Tucker and the early founders of the church that allowed this to happen. It was the spirit that seemed to have been instilled in every person who worked on making all of this possible. From those Italian businessmen who took the idea and without trepidation were willing to approach Rome and say, "We want a church," to every last person that ever worked on any of what would be this exquisitely beautiful campus of the buildings of St. Anthony's and the beautiful grounds of St. Anthony's in the Hills, cannot be thanked enough. From the artisans such as the bricklayers, stonemasons, tile setters, carpenters, plumbers, hod carriers, and those who dug dirt to make all of this exist, you are not forgotten. Every stone, every brick, and every board in these buildings is imbued with your spirit. They are a testimony to a spirit of a people and their leaders who truly knew the meaning of the importance of one person to another, and the greatness of knowing that together they can. To the local businesses, restaurants, and their patrons who define the familiarity of these surroundings, to the lifelong residents as well as newcomers,
and Little Italy is just great.
never forget that you are Little Italy. To those who may wonder what necessity, relevance, or significance an ethnically defined neighborhood may have in these present days, it is high time that you get a cut and shave at Styles or the Shop on the Hill, and then go grab a bite at Mrs. Rubino's, Attilio's, or Madeline's. Take a stroll down Union Street. Enjoy the sights, sounds, and tastes experienced at the Italian Festival. Take in this atmosphere and share with us in the proud tradition, continuing history, and spirit that defines Little Italy of Wilmington, Delaware.
To like hang out at Frankie's. Yeah. Frankie's Sub Shop. Get 25 cents to buy a pack of cigarettes and smoke our guts out. You know? And then go home and like on the way home, like try to air your clothes out so your mother and father couldn't smell it. Then you walk to the house, you know, boom, you know. But
is she still open down Frankie's house?
Yeah, she's still open. She is.
God, how old is she? How old is she?
She's gotta be in her 80s.
God love her. I'll tell you what, if you want a cheeseburger though, you better order it 2 hours ahead of time. Don't be hungry going there.
My grandfather would be in the back. My grandmother would make the spaghetti, and well, my aunt would make the spaghetti. She would cook it, and if you're real lucky, you'd have a little bit of homemade wine for my grandfather. And it just kept getting busier and busier. It was at that time, I believe my aunt used to tell me stories of the Depression, and they knew a good deal. I think. For the money, I mean, I found an old menu, and you could get a dish of spaghetti for $0.25. And if you weren't full, she would bring you another one.
And like we used to hang together. We used to go to TNC Bakery. We did a little bit of everything there. Gamble, everything in TNC Bakery. But and then you go back and get that bread cheaper. And you go there, all that kind of stuff. And across the street from the bakery was Sonny's pool room. Now he let us come in there and play pool. Bob Sandy. We played pool and stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah? What are you doing today? You riding on rides?
Uh-huh.
Yeah? Why don't you tell me, what do you like about the Italian festival?
I like to go on the Ferris wheel.
You like the